and thanks for joining us on HR in the Fast Lane. Today my guest, Gavin Martin, is absolutely somebody I've been wanting to bring to you for some time. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for over 2 years, yeah?
Something like that.
Something like that,
yeah. It's been a while.
And so I actually can share with you something that I love about this fellow entrepreneur next to me. He absolutely has this wonderful journey that led him to his entrepreneurship, in addition to the fact that he has truly just gotten to the place where he's pursuing his joy and purpose like I do in my business. And I think when you get to know him a little bit better today, if you'll so please take the time, please understand that what he brings from his technological background and all this expertise that he had naturally within technology, he actually bridges, like so many people have challenged to do, to the other side. He actually has been very well read, has expertise in human communications to a level that we probably won't be able to dive fully in today. But the fact that he can bridge from both the technological process-oriented side and have the other end of the spectrum in terms of knowledge and expertise on the human communication side, I think that you're going to really enjoy Gavin. His business is Performance Built. Tell us a little bit about Performance Built.
So the basic premise when I founded Performance Built was based on this idea that I saw a lot of companies playing catch up. You know what I mean? You go into a business, they've made a mess of things. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Or they're just idling in that, right?
They're idling, but they're stuck in the mud in some way.
Yeah, unfortunately.
There's a lot of dirt. And it always seemed like performance was something that was like an afterthought. Like, oh, we made all this mess, now let's go back and fix it. And I wanted to create a methodology that the earlier that you started implementing it, the more you could build that company layer by layer to natively perform as an asset for all the shareholders and stakeholders in the company. That could be the market, that could be the community, the economy, the employees, direct investors, so on and so on.
Right. And so typically, do you find when you go into an organization, do you start with the leader of the business? Do you start with like the C-suite person and come in and try and identify the focus?
Yeah, I want to know a few things. I want to know the story behind the company. That's definitely important because it helps me understand who they are and why they're even doing what they're doing. A lot of times I work with businesses where they're sort of losing their purpose. They're not exactly sure why they're doing what they're doing anymore. So I need to know the story. But I am going to talk to the founders of that company who are oftentimes still the operators of that business. Okay. So yeah, C-suite definitely. And then the thing that I want to know after that is, what are they willing to do and what are they not willing to do relative to the outcomes they want? Because a lot of times what the business needs versus what they would like to see in a perfect world are not the same.
It's a very interesting observation. I know that you're really into, when we talk about the process side and your technological background and the things that you bring to the table, when you get in there and you find out the focus, right, and you're trying to identify with this and the members that are at the table with you, when you get into this, one thing that you do really well that I'm passionate about on the other side, right? So I'm all about culture metrics and measuring trust and collaboration, but you get in there and actually like to build metrics around the entire process, the workflow. Take me through that.
Sure. So every business is producing currency day to day if they're in business. If they're not, the doors are closed. And currency I use very carefully versus just revenue because I think there's a difference.
Okay.
So let's pretend there's a stream or like a river, and on one side we have maybe there's a prospective client they could work with, and on the other side you have customer, raving fan, totally satisfied, and there's all these steps in between. To me, that's workflows. There's sales, there's operations, there's marketing, there's management, there's HR sides of things, there's risk management. So although I look at the growth pieces of what I just mentioned, I do have people people who are more in your arena, in compliance, risk management, the culture side of things, to balance that out.
Right.
And then I'm not so much concerned what the departments are. I'm more concerned with why they exist.
That's a good question.
And what needs they fulfill. And then what are the most important numbers that if those numbers move in a more favorable direction, also correlate very strongly with that business performing at a higher level.
Do you find that you typically work with like the financial mind within the business to try and correlate maybe once you identify these metrics through the workflow back to performance management, maybe back to recognition or appreciation initiatives?
I definitely, if I have a really good contact inside the company who's a brilliant CFO or COO, I love working with those people because they get what I'm trying to do. Right. A lot of times they've tried to do this themselves for years, but they lack either the scope, the ability, or more often than not, just the time and resources it takes to do this. I mean, they have their own fires that are right in front of their face. They don't have time for all that. Right. So I like to come in, take those things off their plate and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you had a dashboard that based on, kind of like when you're driving a car, you have a dashboard that shows you what your car is doing. I think you should have the same thing for your business.
Right, and absolutely most people in business know this, but do they actually get to the point where everybody's meeting in one room and actually looking at that dashboard and it's real data, it's live, it's right?
And so often they don't have, even if they know that that's the end result they want, there's a road they have to do to get there.
The work.
And a lot of times, a CEO's time and resources, a good use of his or her resources is not going to be developing a whole system for metrics and measurements and documenting processes. They should, work with a subject matter expert to take that off their plate, because oftentimes, their time's worth with their mind, with their brilliance,
right.
and their leadership role. I mean, it's thousands of dollars an hour of business currency that can be lost if they deviate to a side project like that.
Well, and I think too, you're bridging on something that I'm passionate about, Rich, is performance management and feedback, and also for people to really be able to put their handprint on something like I feel, and go home with that sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. Having something like what you do, identifying through the process what is meaningful and what it's correlating to in terms of results, right? When you're doing that type of work and you're coming in, how do you find that you're able to improve performance? Right? Because I'm guessing that you're bridging directly into impact performance. And sometimes people are frustrated with the people on the team. They think that people aren't delivering, the people aren't competent, they don't have the skills. But let's get back to maybe they just didn't know where to devote their talent.
One of my clients probably described it way better than I ever used to.
Yeah.
He referred me into another company that they work with and said, you have to work with this guy. And they said, why do we work with him? And he goes, look, I get it. Yeah. So this is CEO to CEO talking. I'm not even a part of this conversation. Yeah. He said, look, I get it. You're totally frustrated. You've wanted this business to be at a certain place for the past 5 years, and it simply hasn't gotten there. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of intelligence. And you don't really want to point fingers at your team, but it's hard because you're in a tough situation. You should work with somebody who's going to advise you on not only what to do as a third party, but also hold your hand while he kind of does along with you.
Yeah.
And getting back to your point, how to impact performance, one of the things they've tried to do is, if we had more accountability, then people would be more productive. And a lot of times people think accountability is a process when accountability is actually an outcome. So if we have numbers that everyone can see, well, typically the more something gets measured, the more it gets managed. Peter Drucker said that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, the practical version of that is if every day we know that our team is capable of X amount of hours per day, and they perform 50% below that benchmark, and that benchmark is a benchmark that the team came up with themselves, there is no, iron fist mentality of accountability. It's self-accountability, self-managing. So I want to create cross-functional teams that are self-managing, self-initiated, and oftentimes that organically means that the CEO is actually working less hard than they were before. And so they're sort of like, I don't really know what to do because I always thought it was just a matter of effort. It's like, it's not a matter of effort, it's a matter of leverage.
Well, transparency.
Leverage, communication across everybody in the company, because a lot of times if something's not getting done, it's because somebody doesn't know how to do it and they don't know who to go to for help. So we do we do Monday morning huddles with most of the clients that I work with. Sometimes that turns into like a daily 15-minute quick heads up, here's what I did, here's what I'm working on, here's what I need help with kind of meeting. But to answer your question, when people understand the data and why those numbers are what they are, they can have a sense of purpose tied directly to not only how they help the business grow, but also how they help customers get that sense of total satisfaction at the end of the process.
Which to me is really what it's all about. If you're thinking about just building a sustainable business and having that business continuity, this is something that you're passionate about as well. How do you actually get on the front end of this with your clients? I know you do like a business continuity assessment. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the business continuity assessment came out of one big question. That's what's the difference between companies that make it and companies that don't make it? And there's a lot of different reasons. A company can die for lack of revenue, lack of growth. Sometimes those things are related, sometimes not, believe it or not. Sometimes a company can actually be overfunded and it leaves because they can make too many decisions. So an overfunded company that has made a lot of mess of things will oftentimes have too much creative freedom, too much financial freedom, and sort of dig themselves into a hole. It's almost a race to the bottom. An underfunded company obviously really can't move. So they could have the greatest ideas in the world, but no ability to execute. So there's a sweet spot. And the business continuity assessment was designed to look at not only the upside of things, but also what are things that no matter how much upward leverage and traction you have, can pull the carpet right out from under you if you don't address them. So things like P&C insurance, things like HR compliance, how do you interview people? That's a huge one. A lot of people have never been formally trained on questions you can and cannot ask in interviews, which I know that's one of the things that,
And that's a compliance thing. I mean,
Yeah.
truly just getting into competencies at that point. Are we hiring the right person for the right job from a standpoint of if they're actually passionate about that strength, their skills, et cetera, really evaluating
And how do
these
we come
things.
up with those core competencies?
Right,
I mean,
right.
a lot of people just say, oh, well, we need more sales, so I'll hire a sales manager, and I'm going to look up what sales managers do, and that's
Yeah.
going to be my core
Copy,
competencies.
paste, and-
It's like, but that your business model is not the business model
true.
of that person you looked up that description from. So
True.
there is no, I wish there were a cookie cutter approach in a way. At the same time, that'd make my job really boring.
Well, it's not a commodity, right? It's all
It's
about
not.
Making it something that's value added.
It's,
So
it's
gotta
part
be from
art, part
scratch.
science, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's been my pleasure to just have you on the show today, and I think you shared a lot with our audience in terms of ways that you could work with them and ultimately really bring transparency, metrics, and everything to their workflow and actually build a business that is performance built, right?
Yeah.
So tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. So I would go to performancebuilt.net. That's performancebuilt.net. You could look at some of the articles that we've written. You could look at the services we offer. And also, as you mentioned, there's 3 assessments. The business continuity assessment's a great one because it's myself and 4 other business owners who put this together to cover a lot of different aspects of someone's business.
It's wonderful. Well, do you think we talked slow enough for everybody today, Gavin?
I think we did.
I think so. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicole.